Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show, all about movies.
You're listening to the Jan Price Show, and today my guest is director Mick Davis, but he wears many hats besides being a director. Welcome to the show, Mick.
Thanks for having me, Jan.
It's lovely having you here. Yes, you're a writer, a novelist, a playwright, a producer. You wear many, many hats.
Yeah, and I'm not a bad cook either, so that helps.
Oh, good. I'll be over.
Yeah, cool.
And we're going to talk about your brand new movie, My Dad's Christmas Date, starring Jeremy Piven. It is adorable. It's an adorable movie for this time of year, obviously. How did you get involved in this particular project? You've been involved in so many things. There's so many wonderful things to talk to you about. But how did you get involved in this particular project?
It was last year, around last summer, and I got a call from my producer, Felipe Martinez, who I'd worked with in the past. We'd known each other for 20 years. We did a movie together called Modigliani with Andy Garcia. And he called me up and he said, listen, you want to do a Christmas movie? And he had no idea that that was in my bucket list. So I was so excited. And I said, well, can I read the script? You know, trying to be professional. And then I also said, but yes, you know, I'm going to do it. So I got the script. I was delighted with it. And then that was it.
That was it. Yeah. All right. So how did you get involved how did you cast this movie? Jeremy Piven, we haven't seen in the movies in a while. He's well known from Entourage, obviously, for all those Entourage fans. So how did the casting go about? Sometimes it's fate. You know, you get the right person, because I think it was Martin Scorsese said that 95% of making a movie is about casting it right. Mm-hmm. And, your first thought about Jeremy Piven as playing a dad in a Christmas movie, that's not your first thought, because you're thinking Ari Gold, right? Right.
But then I got on the phone with a guy and I was talking to him, and we had such a sweetness on the phone, and I thought, well, I know this guy has a terrific range as an actor. He's also a brilliant comic. Which is great for me, because we needed to have some more laughs, because the script had all the right emotional buttons, but we needed more comedy in it. And you just know that when you're on the floor with a guy like that, he's just going to bring you stuff that you would never get from some other people. So we had the chat, and then I got off the phone and I said to Philippe, this is and that was it. And then the next thing we know, he's on a plane and he's over in England.
And that, again, everything moved rather quickly for you. And this, the young actress that plays his daughter, Olivia-Mai Barrett, she is absolutely wonderful. Has she been in many other things prior to this movie?
I think Olivia had a Disney show that I think it was shot in Rome, in Italy. I may be wrong about that, but I think that's what she did previously. And she did a couple of other things. But I got to tell you, when she came in to meet me, and this may sound like a big leap here, but she reminded me of a young Jodie Foster. She had such an intelligence about her, but also her response mechanism was so great. And I thought, wow, I could just see her and Jeremy Piven going at it with one another. You know, the way some teenage daughters do with their fathers. I have personal experience with that. So, after the conversation with her, I thought to myself, gee, who does she remind me of? And then I went back to Jodie Foster, and before Taxi Driver, when she did the Bugsy Malone thing with Alan Parker and all that stuff. And I thought, God, she's got such an ability, this girl. And then we signed her up right away, because we knew that she had a lot of heat around her, and we wanted to get her quickly, and that became the perfect combo.
It really is. Their chemistry as father and daughter are just absolutely wonderful. And that's obviously the whole crux of the movie. As you said, 95% is the right casting in the film. So our listeners know a little bit of the synopsis of this movie. Do you want to let our listeners know what this movie's about, My Father?
I'm good at writing 120 pages, but I'm also trying to sum up something in a couple of sentences. But let
let me try.
Okay.
So the idea is that Jeremy plays David and Olivia plays Jules. And Jules lost her mom 2 years previously in a terrible accident. And they've both been lamenting badly. And they can't connect. They don't know how to connect. And so Jules and her friend conjured up this idea. Look, here's the thing. If I can get my father out of this funk that he's in, it would probably make me feel a lot better. And the friend suggests, well, why don't we set him up on a date? And of course, she signs him up for all these dating sites. And every single date ends up hilarious and it ends up a total failure. And then when the father finds out, that's when the trouble begins, what the daughter's been up to. So does that help? Did I do it?
Great. Great job. I really did. Well, it's as I said, it's just a fun little Christmas movie, but it's not so often when we have Christmas movies, they're either really sap or they're very, they're just stupid. They don't have much going for them.
You can say that. I'll try to avoid saying that, but you can say that. But I agree with you, though.
Well, this one doesn't. This one is really very good, and because it's not maudlin. Yes, she's lost her mother. He's lost his wife, but it doesn't go into maudlin territory. It doesn't go into slapstick, even though all the dates are fun and funny. Which is great. And again, that's to Jeremy Piven's credit as an actor that it doesn't get into, again, that sort of slapstick, way that movies can get into. So it's very entertaining. And I think it's definitely a family film that at Christmas time, which we're all looking for something to watch, I highly recommend that you find My Dad's Christmas Date, because it is fun and the whole family could thoroughly enjoy it. Adults as well as children can enjoy this. You've got a great cast. Jolie Richardson, who has just always been one of my favorites. How did you attract her to this project?
That's a great one. Jolie is, obviously she comes from acting royalty.
Right, she does.
Her mom is the great Vanessa Redgrave, who I would love to work with. So I don't know if anybody's listening who knows Vanessa. I've already put the word out with Jolie, so keep your fingers crossed. And then
I will. I did interview Franco Nero.
Oh yeah, Vanessa's. I think she's married.
Husband. Yeah. They've been married for quite a while now. Yeah. And she was in the background when we were doing the interview because she had to set things up. So were in Italy.
I've never met Vanessa, but as far as Jolie goes for the movie, she read the script. She lives in London. She loved the idea of a Christmas movie that had a little edge to it because it had a lot of reality in it. And the funny thing is, the day that she turned up on the set to come and meet me, because she agreed to do the movie on that, and also we had a chat, her and I. And then I'm sitting in a chair and I'm talking to Piven and we're setting up for the next shot. And I see this lady with this long blonde hair, and she's walking through everybody and she's going, I'm looking for Mick. And she turns and it's Jolie. And I stood up and I went, oh my God, I never expected you today. She said, I just wanted to come and say hi and introduce myself, person to person. And but she was so natural, because you're thinking, somebody like that is going to glide in the room and won't touch the floor. And then she was giggling and she said to me, do you mind if I do it in a northern accent, with a bit of a Yorkshire twang to it? And I said to her, how can I resist that? And then she started speaking with a Yorkshire accent for the rest of our conversation. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, man, she has the tap. She can turn it on, turn it off so beautifully. And it was a joy. It was another one of those things. It's like in the past, having worked with people that I love and admire, and then I get a chance to work with Jolie. It was so much fun.
Oh yes, she's just lovely, funny in this movie. She's very, very good in this movie. You filmed this. Did you film it in York? I know it takes place in York, but did you film it in York?
Yes, we shot it in York. For the folks listening to the show, when all this
sadness and madness is over, if you get a chance to go over to England, you've got to visit York. I mean, it's a Roman town. It has a Roman wall around the town.
Wow.
And cobblestone streets everywhere, and most of the buildings are 300 years old. And it's just a spectacular place to make a Christmas movie. And of course, we shot before Christmas of last year, so we managed to capture all the bells and whistles that you would get in a town like that. And also the energy of the place is phenomenal, which is very important if you're doing a Christmas movie, I think, because a lot of the times these movies are contrived. The Christmas movies is kind of forced on you. Mm-hmm. They bring in bags of, whatever, soap powder as snow. But the energy isn't there, and the energy for this was definitely there because you can see it in the people's faces, and you can see it, it's in the DNA of a town like that. So I was very fortunate to shoot in a location such as York.
Did you shoot it through the Christmas season last year or prior to? Or
yes, prior to. So in the first couple of weeks of December of 2019, we shot a lot of stuff, and then Jeremy got over in the January. So I think it was the second week of January, and we picked up. So we broke for the holidays, and then we picked up in the middle of January and got through the rest of the movie, and which was mostly interior stuff anyway. So that was great.
Which right before the pandemic really hit, so you were able to get it in. Wow,
how lucky were we? Yeah.
Very lucky, very lucky. Well, that's the setting of this movie. I mean, the set design and the cinematography and the music. The music's really fun too. I don't know what it is, and I don't know if everybody feels this way, but I certainly do. I mean, anything to do with England, I absolutely love. Any part of England, Scotland, Wales, England, Ireland. And it always has reminded me of Christmas. So for this movie to be set over there, one of my favorite movies is The Holiday. I have to watch it every year.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, and Love Actually, they're always on my Christmas list. I have to watch those during the holiday season. So obviously both of them being set in England. So it's such a beautiful little village, beautiful area. So had you chosen that way in advance, or did you scout different locations? How did that all come about?
Well, obviously you're scouting out for, because you've got to work off the script and what's best for the scenes that you've got to shoot, obviously. And when it came to that town and what we needed to shoot, seriously, you could point a camera in any direction and it would work for you. That was the beauty of it, because there's no real sort of ugly structures that you want to avoid and stuff, because York is very protected by the institution of the British government and the heritage of the British government, because everything there was either built by the Romans or in medieval times. And Georgian houses and stuff like that, Victorian mansions. So they're all protected by the heritage. So really, locations were never a problem for us. I think we had one build in the entire movie, which was just Jules's bedroom. And then the rest was actual practical locations, which was great. So we never had any issues when it came to finding anything we needed in terms of location.
I'm so happy to hear that, because so often you think, is this actually what the town looks like, or did they build this? Did they build this particular set? So it is a picture postcard to York. It really is. And it's just because it's part of the character of the film, as far as, for me, it was
Absolutely.
just the beauty of the area. And, it's just gorgeous. It really is.
It's very Dickensian, because my favorite writer is Dickens.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
it had a very Dickensian feel, and it does even whenever you're there, because I went back there for another thing. So it has that Dickensian magic about it,
Yes.
because London has become such a metropolis now, and it's kind of London's beautiful, but I can imagine when Dickens used to stroll around the streets at nighttime, coming up with ideas, what it must have been like then. Well, that's what York is like now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it. It really is. What was the most difficult part of shooting this?
God, I'd have to make something up to answer that question. I mean, really, truthfully, there was no difficulty because the actors come in with the sleeves rolled up, and that old saying, they left nothing. In terms of the golf analogy, Piven or Olivia, they left nothing in the bag. I mean, they brought everything. And the idea, I think, is, I had the great opportunity to watch directors at the beginning of my career and study a lot from various people. And I learned that if you create a happy atmosphere, especially with something like this, a Christmas movie, then you'll get a better response and you'll get more in return. So my idea throughout the entire shoot was to keep everybody happy. I played music in between setups. I made sure that everybody had, a smile on their face and they were enjoying the work. And then when it came to the big emotional moments, you have to bring it down and let the actor do their thing. So it was really just, juggling, the balls in the air. But, there was nothing I ever came across in this process that was difficult.
It's nice to hear. So often there's some obstacles that take place when you're filming, and it's nice to know that you didn't have too many of those. You have worked with some absolutely amazing actors. You've had quite a wonderful career. Worked with some of my favorites. Tell me, Richard Harris. Richard Harris, the great Richard Harris, whom I adore. What movie did you direct him in, and what was that like directing him?
I didn't direct Richard, but I wrote a movie for him called My Kingdom, which was a contemporary version of King Lear. And the connection with Richard was we'd always wanted to, Richard reached out to me because he'd read a script of mine about Dorian Gray, an Oscar Wilde, the Oscar Wilde novel. And he read it and he loved it so much. And of course, Richard was Irish. And they invited me to London from LA, and they said, come and see me at the Savoy Hotel, which is, undoubtedly one of the best hotels in the world. So
yes,
I never went there to see him. He ended up getting me a room there for like 2 months. And then I discovered that Richard had lived at the Savoy since 1967.
Wow.
So then I spent all these time, and he became my mentor, and I'd walk around with him. We'd go to various locations that Oscar Wilde lived at. We visited a few Irish pubs, I must tell you. And he would just talk to me about the business, and I met Peter O'Toole a couple of times through Richard. And he really, it was an education for me. And he was just, the most incredible man. You could pick anything from Shakespeare at any part of any play, any sonnet, and he could give you an immediate response, word for word. That's how great he was. And then on top of that, he had a great personality because he's Irish. So he could mesmerize you with his conversation. And sadly, I lost him,
Yes. Yeah. I can imagine I can't imagine just sort of sitting there and, listening to his many stories. What a wonderful, wonderful treasure trove he is, I'm sure, of stories, or was,
I have his letters. He wrote me many letters, and I have all of his letters, and I kept them. And sometimes I just read them just to, it's really good to go back and think about the times I had with him, except one time we had bad oysters. I won't go into that.
How wonderful that he wrote you letters and that you have them and that you can go back and reminisce.
Yeah,
have you ever?
Yeah, but the comedy is he was writing letters next door. He was in the room next door to me, and he was writing the letters and slipping them under my door. So
what was that about?
He could have just knocked and said, hey, let's have a conversation. But being the man that he was, he was of that old school, and he liked to put pen to paper, and it was just beautiful I still have them, so I treasure them,
How wonderful. How wonderful. Well, Rod Stewart was instrumental in your career. Tell me a little bit about Rod Stewart and how he influenced your career.
Rod, I used to be a fitness coach with the soccer team in Scotland, which a lot of the soccer fans listening to the show, they will know of Celtic Football Club, which is, it's been around since the 19th century. It's my club, and I've supported all my life. And I was lucky enough to be their fitness coach. And Rod is a big Celtic fan. Whenever you see Rod on stage, he always has a green and white scarf on, and the drum skin has Celtic Football Club insignia on it. So he's a fanatic. And he would come occasionally to watch games at Celtic Park, which he still does. And I grabbed him one time and just asked about, what's it like over there? I'd love to get over there and make movies. And he said, yeah, if you go over, let me know. So I decided when I left Celtic, I just turned up in LA. And I thought, I'll give it 6 months. And I reached out to him through a mutual friend. And I ended up coaching his soccer club here. It was called the Exiles. And training Rod personally at his house. And he introduced me to people who introduced me to more people. And it really was, between him and Mickey Rourke, they were the two people that got my career up and running for me. So I'm eternally grateful to both of them. And Rod never sang for me, though, because he needs to be paid to sing. So he never sang for me.
Now, Mickey Rourke, you've done some work with him, a couple of movies with him, right? And you have another one coming up that you're working on? Yeah. And with Andy Garcia. And Andy Garcia said that Mick Davis is my Scorsese. That's quite a compliment.
I don't know if he was drunk when he said it, but... But it was on the set of Modigliani, which is very close to Andy's heart because, he got to play the role of one of the greatest painters of the 20th century. And I directed him in it, and I also wrote the script. And we were shooting this big, massive scene inside of an old French bistro thing that we had built in Romania, where we shot the movie. And then at one point in the middle of the scene, we were waiting for another setup, and he just came over to me and he said, you're my Scorsese. I've found my Scorsese, which was quite an emotional thing. I had to hold it together. I had about 200 extras there for this scene. And so much so that we became great friends. And anytime I write anything at all, he'll always say me, send it to me first. Don't send it to anybody else. And I wrote this script called The Sculptor, which he's going to star in. It's about the life of Constantine Brancusi, who was a great sculptor, who was Peggy Guggenheim's lover, and was also friends with Rockefeller, who financed his career. And Mickey will play the king of the gypsies in that script. So my relationship with Mickey goes back to the very beginning, where he met with me when I used to ride a Harley-Davidson motorcycle, and God forgive me, it was before helmet law, and I would never wore a helmet.
Wow.
And in any case, Mickey and I we ran into each other, and someone had given him a script of mine, and he read it, and he asked to meet me. And because we had a couple of things in common, he said, I want you to rewrite this script for me. And then I came in and rewrote it, and he loved it. And then he said, okay, you and I are going to work together. And it was like 10 years of just going to Mickey's place and sitting there every day. And just, I'm thinking to myself, the Pope of Greenwich Village, Rumblefish, 9.5 weeks. And then when it came the sequel for 9.5 weeks, he told the producer, I'm not doing it unless you hire Mick Davis to write it. And that's the kind of guy he is,
Wow. What a great, I could listen to you for hours. You've worked with some of the greats. And so I'm sure you have lots and lots of stories. I'd love to have you come back on the show for your next film. So people can find My Dad's Christmas Date. It's on demand right now, correct? So it's available everywhere at this point. So it's a great Christmas movie. I highly recommend it for the entire family. My Dad's Christmas Date, starring Jeremy Piven. Thank you so much, Mick, for being on the show. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thanks for having me, Jan. I had a great time.
Wonderful. Have a great holiday season.
And happy holidays to you, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You too. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
You can listen to The Jan Price Show whenever and wherever at thejanpriceshow.com and on the iHeart Podcast Network, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Jan Price Show, and like The Jan Price Show on Facebook. Thank you for listening.
Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show, all about movies.